Okay, this is going to be an interesting video. We're going to attempt to use my new procedures for starting a campaign from Midwest Fantasy Wargame, the Primeval RPG. This is basically trying to get us back to 1972. So I'm not using the procedures that Arneson created in First Fantasy Campaign because I think what he did with the hex system, the 10-mile hex system, that was a bit of a later evolutionary development, and definitely he wrote that material after year 4 of Blackmore had begun. So what I've done is gone back to the original concept where I watched a video on YouTube, and that video angered me because it was advertised as Chainmail plus OD&D starting a campaign, and then there were, I think, 2 videos where there was nothing used there but different GM emulators. So what I've done in Midwest Fantasy Wargame, the Primeval RPG, is I've created a booklet that has not only the steps that I used taking chainmail and rolling stuff up at random using just the raw chainmail materials, which I think I still have over here. Yeah, I still got chainmail up top here. So I had gone through my copy of Chainmail 3rd edition and marked it up and basically randomized some stuff. You can see some scribbles in here. Probably best place to see that would be in the fantasy section, where I marked up like monsters and locations on a monster and stuff like that. So instead of using this as an oracle, I've taken all that data, dumped it out into Claude AI, and turned it into a series of nouns, adjectives, adverbs, verbs, all that stuff, as well as some specialty tables, so we can roll an oracle if we get to that. But first we're going to generate the campaign, and again, this is mostly chainmail related stuff. So we're going to determine in step 1 the predominant weather for the campaign. So I need to roll 2 6-sided dice. Dice number 1 and dice number 2. All right, dice number 1 is a 3, and dice number 2 is a 2. So 3 and 2 says to treat die number 1, which was the 3, as though it were a result of 4 or 5, and re-roll die number 2. So now we're in the 4 or 5 range, and it's a 5. So 4 to 5 and 5 is temperate, overcast. So step 1, temperate, and often overcast. So that would be more like your Great Britain, British Isles kind of thing, Scotland. All right. Moving on to 2A, the predominant terrain type for the starting 5-mile or 6-mile hex. So I've got these 2 templates that I created for making my own hexes a while back, back when I was experimenting with stuff, so we might use those. So predominant terrain type of the starting 5 or 6-mile hex. And I guess to keep it easy, we're going to go with 5-mile hexes. I think that'll be more OD&D specific. Even though 6-mile, actually I'm going to change that up, 6-mile hexes, because 6-mile hex has between 31 and I think it's about 32 square miles. And there are parts of First Fantasy Campaign that depends on 100 miles because he was using 10 miles. So it's easier to do the translation. Yeah, so we're doing 6-mile hexes. 2A, so I need to roll 3d10 minus 2. So let's get some d10s out here, and let's roll 3 of them. 1, 2, 3d10 minus 2. So we've got a 0, which would be a 10, and a 2 and a 4, so that's 16 minus 2, so that's going to be 14. So predominant terrain type is going to be valley is the predominant, and that just means that 50% of the space within the hex is going to be in the valley. So I guess we can already figure out that we've either got hills or mountains for a good chunk of the rest of the hex, but let's keep moving on. So next we move up to, it says a valley is always adjacent to hills or mountains. So hills or mountains, and that comes on page 196. Yes, this thing is over 240 pages now. Step 2B, there are 2 or 3 other types of terrain that fill the remainder of the hex in roughly equal portions. Roll 1d6 again. I got a 4, and it says a 4 indicates that there are 3 types. So use table from 2A to determine the type. And it says a valley is always adjacent to hills or mountains. So let's do 2, what did I say, 4? So there are 3 types now. So roughly equal portions. So that would be a third of 50%. So we're looking at, you know, like 12% of it's going to be this. 12%, 13%. If I got my math right, that's 50 divided by 3. Good gravy. It's not 20, it's not 15. It's more like 16, isn't it? Yeah, 16. Sorry. So we got 16%, 16%, and 16%. And again, we're rolling these D10s. So what do we got here? D10, D10, 10. So now we got 0 and 5 because we subtract 2, so that would be 5. What do we get here? So we got a woods. I like it when random stuff occurs. So 4, 8, and 7 is 15, minus 2 is 13. That would be a lake. I guess you could have a lake in a predominantly valley area. So now this is going to be either hills or mountains. Let's see if we get it by this kind of roll. So 9 and 8 is 17, 17 and 10. Oh gosh, I should have done 10 on the last one. Doesn't matter. So what did I say last time? I said lake, but that would be 10 more, so that would have been a 23, would have been plains. We're going to stick with lake for now. And then, what is this? 17 and 10 is 27. Minus 2 is 25. That would be plains. So I guess we're just going to say hill or mountain here. We're just going to go 50-50, right? It's next to hills, let's say. So hills, it's mostly valley. We got some woods in there, a lake, and hills. I think that that helps out. So now we're moving on to step 3. Going clockwise, starting in the north, determine the predominant terrain of the hexes that surround the starting hex. So step 3, and we're starting in the north. So let's just put these down on the paper real quick. So again, we're starting with central hex here. And we're going to just rough in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different predominant terrains. So 1, 2, 3. This is so if you're in the central hex and I say, and players ask, you know, what's off to the northeast, you actually have a good answer for it. So again, this is 10. So 10, and yeah, we're going to keep the orange dice as 10s. Here, I'll make this. So this is 2, so subtract that out. So this would be 17. So 17 is canals. So starting in the north. So canals. I guess that could connect to the lake here somehow. Let's see. So 9, and that's interesting. That's a 1. That's a 1. So 9 and 1 is going to be 10, and 6 is going to be 16, minus 2 is 14. So that's going to be valley. Some more valleys over here. Take the 2 out, so that leaves 5 and 6 is 11. That's going to be ancient roadbeds. Roadbeds or canals. So we're going to call it ancient canals. Let's see, so that's 4, that's going to be 2, plus 3 is 5, plus 4 is going to be 9, so that is rough ground, rough or broken ground. 4 and 6 is 10, and 7 is 17, minus 2 is 15, so dense woods, and the last one is 7 and 6 is 13 minus 2 is going to be 11. So again, ancient canals, interesting. So again, ancient canals, and I'm going to say this is Central Lake, so there were probably some canals like this, radiating out. This is valley as well, so this is probably valley, or maybe there's going to be hills between the two valleys. Yeah, let's put the hills kind of in this quadrant. So we're going to say this is the hills, and then over here near the dense woods, we're going to call this the woods. And then what else did I have? I had woods, a lake, hills. Hills, lake, woods, we got it. So the rest of this is going to be valley. This is going to be valley. Okay, we've kind of got an idea now of what's in our central hex and what's off in the various directions. All right, so that was step 3. Interesting that we have these ancient canals. Source of adventure, I'm sure. Going clockwise, we did that. Step 4, determine the division of the cosmic struggle to which the majority of inhabitants within each of the 7 starting hexes are aligned by rolling d6 for each hex. All right, and it's even chances for everything. So we're going to start with the central hex. So 4, the central hex. So hex number 0 is going to be chaos. So the character is going to start a chaotic territory. Interesting. And then we're just going to go around the loop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 other hexes. So number 1 is going to also be chaos. So canals, chaos. 4. So that's going to be neutral, isn't it? 4 is neutral, yeah. Yeah, so the valley is neutral. Ancient canals is, again, chaos. The rough ground to the south, that's where the lawful territory is. Dense woods, too, they're also lawful. And then the ancient canals, those are neutral as well. So we got neutral, chaos, neutral. So neutral toward this other valley on the other side of the hill. Neutral toward those ancient camps. And then you've got law on the border to the southwest and south. Interesting. All right, let's keep going here. So step 5, A, determine the categorization of the starting hex. So wait a minute, let's just write this down in an easier way. So 2 was neutral, chaos, 4 was law, 5 was law, and 6 was neutral. Okay. Oh, that was step 5A. See, this is step 4. Step 5A, determine categorization of the starting hex by rolling d6. We're going to decide if this is wilderness, borderlands, or civilized. So starting hex is going to be 5, which is civilized. Well, that's good. It's a chaotic society, but it is civilized. My handwriting is atrocious. If civilized, there will be a predominant town with 1 to 3 smaller villages. So we've got town, and then 3 villages. So village 1, village 2. Oh my gosh. Come on now. And village number 3. And it also says that there are 3 factions. So we're also going to have to fill out faction 1, faction 2, and faction 3. As the surrounding hexes are categorized, keep in mind the wilderness civilized hexes cannot touch. Okay, so we need to categorize the surrounding hexes. Determine the category of the starting hex. And then we need to determine the other hexes. But keep in mind that wilderness and civilized hexes cannot touch. So there must be at least borderlands hexes. So these are either borderlands or civilized as well. So square number 1 is going to be, let's see, that's wilderness. We can't accept that. We're just going to say borderlands civilized. So 1 to 3 is borderlands. So square number 1 is Borderlands. Grid number, oh, I'm sorry, not square, hex number. Hex number 1 was Borderlands. Hex number 2, Borderlands. Hex number 3, Borderlands. Hex number 4, Civilized. And that's the rough, lawful people. That's the rough ground with lawful people. So they're civilized. And the lawful people in the woods are civilized. And lastly, the neutral people are civilized. So interesting. We've got a lot of civilization here, potentially. All right. As surrounding hexes are categorized, keep in mind wilderness civilized hexes cannot touch. During an invasion, town may raise levies. No need to determine how many factions for the surrounding hexes. Joining factions within the starting hex is sufficient to create enough conflict to get through the first few sessions. Each faction is aligned with some division of the cosmic struggle. So I think we might be getting ahead of ourselves here, but I'm going to go ahead and roll faction 1, 2, and 3, what division they're from. So that is division number. Faction 1 is associated with law. Faction 2 is associated with neutrality. And faction 3 is associated with law. Interesting. I think we might have to change that later when we get to faction play. All right. 9 minutes in. Place towns and villages within each hex by dropping dice onto a sheet of paper with a hex drawn onto it. Where the dice falls determines the relative position. So we're talking about the town and our 3 villages. So I need a larger hex and I need to drop dice onto it to kind of figure this out. We're going to make this easy. We're going to use these special 12-sided dice for the villages, and we're going to use a 6-sided dice for law, or for the town. Oops. Get one on there. Get one on there. Okay, so about there, about there, about there, and about there. We might have to. That's a little too clustered, but I think what we're seeing here is we're going to distribute these around the lake. So we're going to have our town here, and we're going to have our villages. I don't remember what order I rolled them, but I think I'll go with these numbers here. So 2, 3, 4. So we're going to call that 1, 2, 3. So 1 is over here. So this is village 1, and that's village 2, and this is village 3 up here. And those probably, they align with these canals. It's amazing how the dice kind of tell the story for you. All right, so that was step 5B. And then we connect those via roads. Connect towns and villages via roads. Primary roads usually connect towns between different hexes. Secondary roads connect villages and towns together within the same hex. So secondary roads, so they're going to be secondary roads that I need to put on here that are going to basically do a loop-de-loop around the lake here. So we're going to ring the lake with roads. So I'm just going to make a note to myself. Secondary road is a bit of a racetrack here. Okay, and that facilitates movement. 5C, waterways, such that smaller waterways feed into larger waterways. Headwaters always near hills. So in this case, since we have ancient canals to either side, but we've got canals going to the north here that is up toward where the hills are too, and more valleys, I'm going to say that this is the headwater is up here and flows down into the lake from the north. So that was 5C. 6A, as the campaign is assumed to be humanocentric, the predominant factions are always, the predominant faction within the starting hex is always human. Determine the muscle used by the predominant faction using 1d20. So, predominant faction. Each faction is aligned with some division of cosmic struggle. Each faction has a leader, and the predominant faction has muscle. So, predominant faction is going to be law. Interesting. The population, or the hex itself has a chaotic character, but the predominant faction is lawful. So we've already got a bit of a conflict here. That's good. D20.